Now, Greece is the first advanced country to fail to repay a loan to the International Monetary Fund and is formally in arrears. All this because Greece didn't pay back €1.6 billion to the International Monetary Fund. This was a big red line we were talking about a few days ago, but now we're waiting for a Greek referendum on Sunday. While ever the situation remains unresolved, it leaves travellers to Greece in a bit of a quandary. Take advantage of a cheap holiday or beware the pitfalls of a destination that has no money in its ATMs. Phil Sylvester is a travel safety specialist at TID. Phil, the government website Smart Traveller says to exercise normal safety precautions. Should people consider Greece as a good holiday destination at the moment?
Well, I think the falling euro is probably going to make it a bit cheaper than it has been for a while. I heard what you're saying about the ATMs had no money. We also saw those pictures on the weekend of the long lines at the ATM. It was on a weekend when those machines weren't being replenished. I know the Greek banks have promised that they will replenish those machines. That's not a fast process, of course. And an important thing to remember is those capital controls, that ATM withdrawal limit of €60 a day, does not apply to people with bank cards issued in foreign countries. You can go to an ATM in Greece that has cash in it and withdraw up to your normal daily limit. And I was reading a story about a Japanese gentleman just yesterday who did that, managed to get out €500. So he's got enough cash to see him through for a few days.
And I reckon he would have had a crowd following closely behind, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Well, look, I've got to say that is one of our biggest worries here. We're always telling people to only carry enough cash on you to, get through the day, and carrying large sums of cash like that. Every pickpocket and thief in Europe is going to know that Greece is a target-rich environment this year. So we're urging all of our customers to be especially careful about how they carry their money on them. Don't put it in the backpack or in the bum bag. I know they're not fashionable or comfortable, but a money belt might be the way to go this year. And again, only take out what you can use in the day and leave the rest in the hotel safe. And I don't mean the room safe. They're surprisingly easy to crack open, by the way. Take it to the front desk and ask them to put it in the hotel safe there. Get a receipt from the guy at the desk.
Now, is it safest to take cash in with you or to rely on the ATMs?
Look, if I was going, what I would probably do is take, a few days' worth of cash in euros with me, which I wouldn't normally do. Whenever I travel, as soon as I get to the airport, I'd find an ATM and take some local currency out using my card. But the banks don't open again in Greece until July 7. If there's another crisis, the ATMs may get shut down again for however long, we don't know. So I'd have a few days contingency cash on me, but I'd still take my travel money card and my debit card and my credit card. We always advise whenever you travel to have multiple sources of access to your money.
Now, what would happen if a new currency is introduced, or should we say the old currency is reintroduced?
Well, all the old jokes about what does a Grecian urn come back for a start, about 50 drachmas a day. But from what I understand, it's not going to be an overnight process. They have to create enough of the banknotes and then get them out to all of the banks and into all of the ATM machines. I think what will probably happen is for several months, probably even a year, the euro will continue to be used in parallel, and I think there won't be a switch over. I think it will be a slow process, especially for visitors. It'd be a very different situation for Greeks living in Greece. I imagine if the banks get nationalised, their euros will suddenly become drachmas, on paper at least anyway.
All right, so any other general safety tips that people should be aware of?
Oh, the Greeks don't mind a bit of a protest, and they have a tendency to turn into riots sometimes. Depending on how that vote goes on Sunday, there may be a bit of angst. Stay away from protests and public gatherings. They're pretty easy to spot where they are as well. Syntagma Square in Athens is notorious for being the focal point there. And in Thessalonica, it's the Kamara districts and around Aristotle Square. Even when those riots were going on, it didn't happen very much out on any of the islands. So, sit back at the taverna, have another Retsina and keep your eye on the news. All
right, sounds pretty good. Phil Sylvester, thank you.
Good on you, Tracy. Bye.
So you're not left crying if you are heading overseas, and including a stop by in Greece over the next few months. As we know, things are pretty uncertain in that country in relation to what will happen over the next few weeks. The Greek government has defaulted on repaying several deadlines on repaying international loans, and I think there's another deadline coming up on July 20th, so just a few weeks away. In the meantime, what happens for those who are travelling in the area, and should things happen like a major implication like a currency change, that the Greek government decides to go back to the drachma or is forced to if it ends up being kicked out of the European Union? What will happen to you as a traveller, and even with your access to money while this cloud hangs over it? Phil Sylvester is a travel safety specialist at Travel Insurance Direct. Phil, good afternoon.
Hi, Sonia. How are you?
I'm extremely well, but it could be a pretty uncertain time for many people who'd planned that dream trip this summer, European summer.
Yeah. I'm in the midst of anxiety, uncertainty, and instability, and not the perfect way that you want to be spending your holiday, are
No, indeed. And no matter what you do, even if you're trying to stay out of the politics of it, you need money to live and to spend and to exist there. So this could have an impact on anyone who is heading to Greece.
Well, look, I've got a little bit of bright news for you in there. The Greek government has announced those capital controls that have been imposed, the limits on withdrawals that you can take from ATMs and the caps on use of credit cards, don't apply to cards which have been issued by foreign banks. So tourists who are in the country can still use their cards at ATMs and withdraw up to their usual daily limit from the ATM.
So those €60 limits only apply to Greeks themselves,
to Greeks.
Or those who have
That's right.
accounts in Greece?
Well, yes. Well, you're likely to be Greek if you've got an account at a Greek bank. If you're a tourist, and there are 14 million cashed-up tourists heading for Greece this summer, they'll be bringing their cards from home. That's, by far the easiest way to get access to your money while you're away. You land in a country and stick your regular bank card into the machine and pull out local currency. It's what I was doing recently when I was in South America. It's a fantastic way of getting it.
Well, it is, as long as you can get the currency, and I guess that's where some people have had the concerns about.
Yeah, look, those pictures of those very long queues at ATMs that we saw recently, that was over a weekend when they weren't refilling the machines, and there were no limits on how much Greeks could take out at the time. And they're, quite rightly very concerned about the money they've got in the bank suddenly being devalued by 50 to 80%. So I'd be taking my money out as well as quickly as I could. But the banks have said that they, now during the working week, they will endeavour to replenish those machines. That's a bit of a slow process. But on top of that, with that €60 a day limit now imposed on Greeks, that means there's going to be more cash inside those machines which are replenished, so it's going to be easier for tourists to be able to get the money that they want. At the same time, the Greek government has said, those capital controls do not apply to, your credit card use or to any debit card, travel money card that you happen to be using there. The problem is, of course, lots of people don't want to put any more money, Greek businesses don't want to put any more money in their bank. They want cash, so they're going to be asking, if there's any way you can pay in cash.
So is it likely that if you were travelling around having meals, those sorts of things, that in a way maybe it's best to use your credit card if you were heading to those to Greece as a destination?
Yeah, the Greek government is guaranteeing that you can still use your credit card there. Whether individual businesses may prefer you to pay cash is up to those businesses. But look, the thing that Greece needs most right now is for money to stop flowing out of the country and for foreign currency to come in. And, 14 million cashed-up tourists have got plenty of it to bring with them. They were contributing, off the top of my head, trying to remember the figure, something like 20% to the economy, tourism. So they're acutely aware that this is one of the few bright spots they've got in a very dark economic outlook.
Well, is it likely then that they would try to cash in on that and actually make a lot of the items that you would normally buy more expensive to see that dollar value increase, or that euro dollar?
Well, maybe some people will try and profiteer, but the thing is, the crisis has created a bit of a drop in the exchange rate of the euro. It's actually going to be cheaper for anybody to travel to Europe at the moment because the euro has travelled down. Happy news for me, I'm going to Italy in September, so it's just suddenly become a little bit cheaper for me, which is fantastic. I mean, this is a Greek problem for Greeks. If you're a temporary visitor to the country, this is a short-term inconvenience. This is a short-term worry, maybe a short-term hassle if you have to queue up at an ATM. But this is not a long-term problem for you if you live in another country. Not yet, anyway.
Is there a chance, there's some talk over the next few weeks, if Greek further defaults on the next loan that comes due on July 20, that they will be literally thrown out of the European Union, that there were reports already that they've got hundreds of thousands of drachma already printed, ready to go as the replacement currency. If the currency was replaced, where does that leave travellers? Does the money they have automatically get changed into drachma? Will they be left high and dry as far as being able to pay for things or their accommodation or food? A currency change feels like uncharted territory.
I think you're spot on there. The reports I'm reading are that swapping over to the drachma or the new drachma, whatever they call it, will actually take many months, possibly up to a year. I haven't read those reports that they have drachma ready to go, but I imagine if ATMs, even in tourist spots, if you go to an ATM, you usually get an option on which currency to withdraw. Travel money cards are good that way. When I went to South America recently, I loaded up some US dollars on it as well as some of the Australian currency, and when I used an ATM there, I could decide which one to withdraw if I thought there was a better exchange rate on US dollars. So those kinds of travel money cards are pretty handy. You could load that up with euros and still withdraw euros. The euro will still be, an exchangeable legal currency. I don't think they're going to be able to suddenly replenish all the banks and ATMs overnight with drachmas. I think it will be a slow changeover to the new currency.
I'm talking with Phil Sylvester from Travel Insurance Direct about the implications for travellers with the uncertainty financially in Greece at the moment if you're planning to travel. Phil, despite those reassurances, if someone still feels uncomfortable about travelling to Greece and has already booked a trip, would something like travel insurance cover a change of heart about going?
There is a type of insurance which is available in some parts of Europe and the United States, which is called cancel for any reason, which means if you change your mind, you can cancel it yourself. Very expensive premiums on those policies to, depending how far out you are, 25-50% of the cost of the travel. Generally, travel insurance in Australia doesn't have that. We have a product which is cheaper and easier to access, but it doesn't have those kinds of benefits in it. It's, a balance between the costs.
So would this be a legitimate reason to cancel a trip, I guess?
Well, sadly, if the hotel is open and operating and your airline is flying to Greece, then that's not cancellation, that's change of mind. So the cancellation coverage in Australian terms means if your trip has been cancelled on you rather than if you wish to cancel your trip. Look, it's up to each person to make an assessment of the level of risk they're comfortable with. If you're a couple of months out now and you go, I don't like uncertainty whatsoever, Turkey's nearby, similar climate, and it's got islands as well. You may decide it's actually better to lose those 10% deposits and cut your losses and go to Turkey rather than risk losing everything whilst you're in Greece. Yeah. But that has to be. That's not what travel insurance covers you for in Australia.
Phil Sylvester, thank you for joining us on the program today. Phil,
my pleasure,
is from Travel Insurance Direct, and he's a travel safety specialist. Just to let you know what the Australian government's Smart Traveller website says in relation to this, their advice is that Greek banks will be closed until July 6th. Visitors to Greece should be aware of the possibility that banking services, including credit card processing and servicing of ATMs throughout Greece, could become limited at short notice. Daily ATM withdrawal limits do not currently apply to most major foreign debit credit cards, but make sure you have more than one means of payment with you, cash, debit cards, credit cards, and make sure you have enough money to cover emergencies and any unexpected delays. Petrol stations may not accept credit card payments, so good warning there.
Are you planning on heading on an overseas holiday soon? Maybe you've already got your tickets booked. And what if those tickets are to Greece? What do you do when you're heading to a country that is headlining world news with an escalating debt crisis? Should you still go? And if so, what do you need to know? Phil Sylvester is a travel safety specialist at Travel Insurance Direct. Phil, good afternoon.
G'day, how you going?
Really well, thank you. Should people still be excited and jumping on planes to go to Greece for holidays?
Well, I've been reading the reports from people who are there, and they've been saying, it's only sort of hit the news in the last couple of days over in Greece, and people are still having a fantastic time. 14 million people on the books to go there this summer, and, I think it's a great destination to go to. And from what I can see, apart from it adding a little bit of anxiety and uncertainty in the next week or two, I don't think you should be cancelling right now. I think it's going to be okay.
14 million, that's around the world? 14 million visitors expected to Greece?
Correct, yeah.
Gosh.
At about 190,000 Australians.
Okay, so clearly Australians like heading around the Greek Isles. We have, of course, heard about limits being imposed on ATMs. Will they affect tourists as well?
The thing that Greece needs more than anything right now is to stop money flowing out of the country. They need foreign currency coming in. And those 14 million people heading there this summer are loaded up with it. They want it from us. That's what's going to help them. And the Greek government has announced that those capital controls, those limits on withdrawals from ATMs and any caps on use of credit cards don't apply to people whose cards are issued by foreign banks. So you can go and put your Aussie card into an ATM machine in Greece and you can take out up to your normal daily limit. You're not subject to that €60 a day limit. That's only for Greeks. So if you can find an ATM that's got cash in it, you should be able to take out as much as you want. And I think you're going to be able to start finding more and more of the ATMs that do have cash in them. Those long queues that we saw, that happened over a weekend when they weren't able to replenish the machines. The banks have promised they're going to get round and fill them up again as fast as they can. And with Greeks limited to just €60 a day, that means, they shouldn't run dry as quickly. So I think it's going to get easier and easier to get some cash when you go there.
Okay, so people shouldn't be thinking, I should take extra cash on in my purse or wallet, worried about not being able to access it.
Well, look, all of the advice that we're seeing from other foreign governments and even the Greek government itself is saying you should take some extra cash with you just in case. Look, we've got about a week and a half before we find out what's really happening after the referendum and the banks open again on July 7. But if it turns to custard again, they could shut the ATMs down for another day or two or a week or whatever. So I think it makes sense to take along some extra euros with you and just for contingencies, just to be safe. But take your normal credit card, take your debit card or your travel money card with you as well. It always makes sense to have multiple sources of access to your money whilst you're overseas.
Greece is certainly not the first country to go through turbulent times. What's the best way to find out about, travel warnings if you see that there are protests going on in the streets somewhere to establish that it is safe to go and proceed with your holiday?
If you're already in Greece, the best thing you can do is talk to the people at the front desk of your accommodation. They're the ones who are reading the Greek newspapers. I don't know about you, but I don't read Greek. So talk to the people at the front desk, ask them what they've heard, where is it going to be today, is it going to be trouble, where should I stay away from? The other thing about those protests in Greece, they do have a tendency to turn into riots, don't they? But especially in Athens, they kind of usually concentrated on Syntagma Square and the Omnia district. If you're in Thessaloniki, it's around the Kamara district and Aristotle Square. So these are places where normally you'd be walking through those, but if you see any protests happening in those areas, the wise thing to do is turn around and head in the other direction and get away from it.
What about things like registering your travel plans with Smart Traveller? Is that a good thing to do?
Yep. DFAT, you can look it up online pretty quickly as well and get the latest information there. And my company as well, if you take out an insurance policy, we have a travel app when we put out alerts as well on our app called Tripwise. So there are multiple sources, but locals on the ground are always the best ones to check with.
In terms of travel insurance, are you still fully covered? If you go to a country that is experiencing some uprising on the ground, is your travel insurance still comprehensive?
Look, if you're on the ground and inadvertently you bump into a riot that's going on, you're covered. If there's any medical expenses out of that, or you need medical evacuation back to Australia, that's covered by TID insurance. But if you go looking for trouble, so if you hear that there's a protest on, you think, I'll just go and have a look, and you get into trouble, then you've put yourself at unnecessary risk to get all sort of, insurancy on you. And we're going to be asking some questions about that, and you're going to have to, jump through some hoops to make your claim with that one. So that's why we say stay away from any protests and what have you. Look, even the other one thing I need to point out is, obviously, the Greek economy is going to take a big hit. There's going to be a lot of heartache there for Greek businesses. And some of those smaller businesses, the mum and dad operations and what have you, they're the ones that are likely to go to the wall first. They're the ones without, massive reserves in the bank. So if you've booked any part of your trip overseas with one of those guys, you're probably going to be, in a slightly more risky situation than if you booked with a big name brand or a big international hotel chain. And sadly, insolvency of businesses is not covered by travel insurance. It's impossible for any insurance company to know the ins and outs of the books of every business in the world at any moment in time. So that ends up as being an exclusion. So be careful when you prepay, when you book things going to Greece. Try and stick to those big name brands. You've got a little bit more security behind that.
Phil, really appreciate your advice this afternoon. Thank you.
Good on you, no problem. Bye.
G'day, David. How you going, mate?
Good. First things first, a lot of people asking questions. We're going into the peak summer season in Europe, especially Greece, which is a favoured holiday destination not only for Europeans but from people all over the world. How is this latest crisis going to affect their holidays?
Especially for the next week or so, there's going to be a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty, and that's not exactly what you want if you're going on a holiday there soon. But I think after that, the dust will settle. I don't think it's going to have too much of an impact if you're careful about the way you travel there.
All right, so do you use credit cards when you're over there? Do you use cash? Do you use the ATMs? What should you be doing?
The Greek government so what they need at the moment is cash to stop leaving the country. They need foreign money coming in, and there are 14 million cashed up tourists heading towards Greece this summer. They want the money. So they've said, this is not going to affect tourists coming into the country. As a matter of fact, those capital controls, those withdrawal limits on ATMs, don't apply to cards issued by foreign banks. So if you're a tourist, you can get an ATM that's actually got some cash in it. You'll be able to take out up to your normal daily limit. You won't be subject to that €60 a day control that the Greeks have. Now, will the ATMs have cash in it? All those long queues that we saw, people queuing up to take out their money, that happened over a weekend. When they weren't being refilled. The banks have said they will refill those ATMs, so if you can get to one of those when it's not being run dry, and probably not going to be now because the Greeks are being limited, you should be able to get out as much cash as you want. However, if things turn to custard over there, who knows? They may shut down the ATMs again for another period. So the best thing to do is make sure you take multiple sources of accessing your money there. So take your credit card, it's going to be honoured. Take a debit card or a travel money card as well, and take lots of cash.
Would it help if you maybe took US dollars with you?
No, I don't think so, because then you're going to get hit twice when you buy the US dollars and when you convert them again. Look, even if Greece leaves the euro monetary system, they don't actually have any drachmas. They haven't got any. They don't exist yet. So it would be months, a year, maybe 18 months before they could actually produce enough of the new banknotes. So the euro is still going to be accepted tender over there. I mean, even if you go to places like the UK where they're not part of the euro money, in popular tourist destinations there, you can actually get away with paying for stuff in euros, even though the British pound is what you're supposed to use there. So it will still be accepted tender for the foreseeable future. So take euros if you're taking anything.
Okay, is it a wise move to get your euros in Australia, for instance, before you travel?
I'd get enough for a couple of days before you go. When you get there, if you can find an ATM, you can use your Australian card and it will spit out euros to you. It's a great way to access your money when you're travelling overseas. But I'd just make sure you have a couple of days worth of money to get you through, just in case you can't get to an ATM straight away once you arrive in Greece.
Should there be any additional safety measures or insurance measures that travellers should look to take before travelling there?
The advice that's coming out from foreign governments and from the Greek government as well to make sure you've got plenty of cash on hand is a big worry for us at Travel Insurance Direct, because every thief and pickpocket in the world knows that the tourists walking around are going to be loaded up with cash. So we're very concerned about people being targets for the amount of cash they've got. I know they're unfashionable and not particularly comfortable, but get a money belt. If you've got to carry large sums of cash, don't have it in a backpack, don't have it in a bum bag, make sure it's somewhere inside pocket of your clothing or something like that. And when you get to your hotel room, only take out every day the amount of cash that you need to get through the day and leave the rest locked up at the hotel. And beware, those room safes in your room, they're not particularly safe, actually. You'd be surprised how easy it is to get those open. You just need a drink can and give it a whack in the right spot and it'll spring open.
Oh, so thanks for telling me that, Phil, yeah.
There is even a video on YouTube that you can see where there's a bloke in a hotel in Cambodia, puts his valuables inside the room safe and then picks it up. It wasn't bolted down to anything. So look, take your money down to the front reception, get them to put it in their safe there, obviously put it in an envelope if you can, and get a receipt from the guys so you know exactly what you've handed over and you've got written receipt that they've taken control of it. That's the best way of protecting it.
Okay, so the bottom line is don't panic, use your brain, be smart, be safe, and don't do anything silly.
Well, isn't that always the advice?
Well,
I try to apply that when I'm going to work every day, you know?
I know, but we should apply it when we're on holiday and our brains aren't functioning in work mode.
That's right. Well, when you go on holiday, don't let your brain take a break as well. That's what we say.
All right, Phil, thanks very much for the advice, mate.
Good on you, mate. No problem. Happy travels, everyone.